Joe Beimel, Kersey, PA. That's where you are. That's where you're from. You're not from St. Mary's, even though that's where you went to school. It's always Kersey's Joe Beimel. Joe, it's great to see you again, and this is going to be fun catching up.
Yeah, I'm glad to be on here. Always good talking to you.
So the last time we chatted, and this was it was over 7 years ago, or almost, I guess, 8 years ago. We sat at Beimel Field in Kersey talking about the end of your baseball career, and I got to show you the picture. I took a picture that day. There you go. So we got all the baseball helmets and everything there. So that, and then if you noticed, and my son really got on me about this. He was there with us, Jameson, and I busted your bobblehead, but I still have it.
Nice.
I still have it. The arm's missing, the right arm, so you could still throw. And hat up there as well. So it was a little embarrassing, but hey, that's not a bad likeness. Did you thought that when this first came out, were you pretty impressed with how they did? Some of these don't go well.
I definitely was. Yeah, I think I got lucky because I had like a super fan and like this Dodger Blues blog that they kind of stepped in, and I guess they were talking to like the creator of it and making sure that it was coming out good. So once they showed it to me, I was like, oh wow, that's a super handsome bobblehead right there.
So how many of those do you have in your possession?
I have this one.
There we go. Hey,
I only have one. So the funny story is I had probably, once it came out, I had a box that had like hundreds of them in it. And I was like, well, what am I going to do with all these? So I gave them to my dad, and I think he had them in the trunk of his car, and he'd be at a gas station or something, be like, oh, hey, see somebody, oh, hey, you want a bobblehead? You give him a bobblehead. So then by, about a year later, there was none left. 'Cause, like everybody, I think in Elk County has one. And then I didn't have one. So my wife kind of redesigned like this office that I'm in now, and she had to actually buy one off of eBay because we didn't have any.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Great story, some great times from those years. So I trying to think back to when you and I first, and I think the first time I saw you pitch was at the American Legion State All-Star game in Harrisburg. And maybe we'll get back to, did you ever pitch there later? We'll get to that in a second. 94?
Yeah, probably. I would say it was probably 94 or maybe the summer of 95. I can't remember.
I think it was the summer of 94 because I was down there because Chad Krell made the big 33 game again. They play Ohio. Chad was a Clearfield quarterback, and then it was the same weekend. So I'm like, hey, let's go here. And then you guys randomly show up. I was in Clearfield at the time, and I took a picture, and I'm trying to remember who was all in that. I mean, this is a pretty good. So the DuBois guys were. Do you remember the DuBois guys? Mike Sunderland was there for Clearfield.
I do not remember at all. I don't remember who was there.
And then later it was Allegheny College, because that's the first place you went.
Yeah.
And we took a picture with you, Tim, and Tom Pitsley. Was it Smiley? Chris Smiley, the fourth one?
It's probably Bob Spangler.
Spangler, not Smiley. Yep, Spangler was with you.
And Smiley was there the following year.
So he was there. Okay.
Yeah, he was there. I don't know I think we're the same age. But I think he either came there or transferred there, maybe from somewhere else for his sophomore year.
I recently chatted with Greg Mamula. The talent in the 90s, Joe, and you were kind of involved with that, and this wasn't exactly where I was going to go, but did you guys my theory on baseball getting recognized in District 9, the scouts, and I talked to guys who played in the 70s, and they said that the college scouts just weren't around here, or the pro scouts just weren't around. There were some good players that maybe didn't get a chance to even get looked at to go to college. Now it's evolved now where you have more opportunities in baseball, but Was it the Jim Pitsley factor that got you guys started to get recognized? I mean, that it's easier to get recognized now, but once a good player goes through, you buy into that because there's a lot of good players that we just mentioned.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm sure that has something to do with it. I think, there was he was quite a bit older than I was. I think he was, well, not quite a bit. Now, when you're my
Yeah,
age, it's like, oh, we're like the same age. But, in high school, it's so much different. I think I was probably a freshman when he was a senior. So that seems like a long, long time. And I don't know if was anybody kind of in between there.
right.
Um, I don't really remember anybody, getting
Dan
drafted in
Petrov.
between there.
Yeah, Dan Petrov would have been the same age, I think, as Jim.
Yeah. So, but I would imagine that played a role in it. But then we had so many good players, that were my age, like we mentioned earlier. I mean, myself, Bob Spangler, Tim Pitsley, like we were roommates, down in Cumberland, Maryland, and all three of us got drafted that freshman year, out of there. So
Well,
I think that
that's why I told.
probably,
No, I'm
I
sorry.
think that
Go ahead.
probably played a big role. But yeah, it's hard to say because before that, I went to those Legion All-Star games, and I think that's where I got quite a bit of, exposure because they didn't have the stuff they do now, and now I feel like kids get overexposed. But that's another, we might touch on that later. But
Yes.
uh, yeah, I think it was just a time where if you were good, they were going to come see you no matter what.
Right. Right. Yeah, I was going to mention. I think when you guys got drafted is when we staged that photo because of the draft, and then went from there. So let's zip up to 2017. So I talked to you that August. You played a little Fed League ball. You finished up your career, we thought. And then as I looked at my baseball reference reminder, in 2021, Joe Beimel resurfaces in the minors, El Paso and San Antonio. What happened between 17 and 21? I saw some, we would, if we paid attention to the YouTube videos back then, we saw Joe Beimel throwing a lot harder. And that was stuff that, I guess you're embracing now as training. So explain how where you went from 17 to that 21 season where you went back into the pro ball.
Yeah, so after, I retired in 2017, I kind of came home for a little bit. Was living in Kersey for a couple months, played Fed ball, had a blast. I got to play with a bunch of my cousins. My cousin Mike was our coach. We're the Kersey Kings, I think, was our team.
Yep.
And we did really well. And I didn't necessarily want to pitch. I was just like, you know what? I'm 40 years old. I want to play more of the field and I want to hit a bomb. And that was basically my whole goal of playing Fed ball. And I did pitch a little bit. But I was able to hit a home run in the playoffs, which I was pretty pumped about. But then I ended up going back home to Los Angeles where I was living at the time. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I didn't really, when I retired, it wasn't like something leading up where I was like, oh, I think I might retire in a month or two. It was just kind of like that. It kind of hit me. And I'm like, you know what? I'm done doing this. I just don't want to play anymore. So I didn't really have a game plan going into that. And I probably sat on my couch for like a month. I just wasn't really doing anything. I wasn't leaving the house. And my wife was just kind of like, what are you doing? You can't just, you're going to be retired the rest of your life. You can't just sit here and not do anything. And I was like, yeah, I think you're right. So I started trying to figure some things out. I was talking to a buddy of mine at the time, Brent Dean, who's my business partner now. We were kind of coming up with some different scenarios about possibly doing some camps or, start training guys. And an opportunity came up for us to open a facility. So we jumped on it right away and we started Beimel Elite Athletics. That was in, it was at the end of 2017, but not officially started, with our business license and everything till, beginning of 2018. So we started just, we were in the corner of this random facility and we just started training guys and kind of really took off because one of one of our clients was a kid who hadn't played baseball since 8th grade. He was like a big football player, had a few injuries, and then wasn't going to play football anymore. So he wanted to start playing baseball again. And it was his senior year, and after having not played since 8th grade, we're just like, all right, like we'll train you and try and get you to throw harder. And he started throwing like low to mid 90s. And then he got like a D1 scholarship,
Hmm.
after only playing his senior year. And it just kind of like everybody in the area was like, "Whoa, whoa, how'd they do that?" So our business kind of took off from there. And then obviously I played for the Dodgers and had kind of that
Right.
reputation in the area in Los Angeles. So, um, we grew pretty quickly and then got an opportunity to go to El Paso in 2020. So we started, a facility there. I moved to El Paso. And while I was there, I've always been somebody who I just always liked learning about the game. I like learning different training methods, different recovery methods, all of that stuff. So, once I retired, I didn't stop working out. I didn't stop throwing. And then I was basically doing stuff that we were teaching our athletes. So I was basically anything new that we would do, I would be the guinea pig, and I would kind of,
Okay.
we got this arm care system, and I started using it first before we had any of our athletes do it. And it was the pandemic or whatever, so I was trying to find ways to be healthier too, like with ice
Hmm.
baths and breathing techniques and red light therapy and all this different stuff. So it was just kind of this perfect storm where I was doing all these different things, all these different training methods. And then we had, a couple kids because it was COVID, nobody was playing. So we were doing like live at bats in the gym, and some of our pitchers just weren't throwing strikes. So I was like, oh, if you guys want some extra at bats, I'll kind of throw to you. So I'm throwing, and I hadn't thrown in probably 2 or 3 months.
Right.
So I just get up there and I'm throwing about 83, 84, and, just trying to let them hit it. And then I started adding a little bit, adding a little bit. By the end of the session, I hit 90, and I was like, what the heck? Like, I used to have to train, when I was playing in my 30s, there was no way I was hitting 90 and just like a random bullpen
Yes.
or
I mean,
random
you're
live at
you're
bats.
yeah, you're like 43, 44 years old here, and I mean, your prime time career, your velocity was where?
I'd say the highest it's been, I would touch 95 once in a while.
Okay.
I do have a video in, like, I think it was 2003. It was a 1-2 pitch to Todd Helton, and it said 99 on the board, and then it said 99 on TV. So I always claim that. I don't know if it was a misread or what, but I
Okay.
claim it. I say that's what I've topped out of. But that was just kind of a fluke outing where my velocity was up for some reason.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I would, if I let one rip, it would be maybe 93 to 95.
Okay.
But I usually sat in like the 88 to 91 mile
Right.
an hour range,
Right.
in my 20s. And then in my 30s, I didn't hit 95 one time. So, I went through my whole 30s in the big leagues, didn't hit 95. And then, I'm like, well, if I'm hitting 90 right now, I might as well just start training for fun and see where I
Yeah.
can get. And I ended up getting up to 95 in our gym, in live at bats against these high school and college kids. And I was just like, man, do I have to like come back and try and play? Like, I had it wasn't a thing where I was upset that I retired, or,
Right.
some guys, they stop playing or the game gets taken away from them and they're bitter about it. And that wasn't my case at all. I was happy to be retired. There wasn't a day that went by when I was retired where I was like, oh man, I really miss playing. So I was kind of a little apprehensive because I didn't
Right.
necessarily want to play, but I was like, if I'm throwing 95, I feel like I have to. So I started throwing for some scouts and wasn't getting signed. I was 44 years old, and I think
Right.
everyone was like, well, there's no way you'd last like a full season or something at that age. But um, an opportunity for me came up to pitch against Israel's Olympic team because, again, it was COVID and they couldn't find, anybody to play against them. None of the minor league or none of the
Right.
major league teams would let their minor leaguers play, down in Arizona against them. So we put a team together of guys that we trained in El Paso and in LA, and we went to play um, Team Israel. And so I pitched one of the games, and I was, up to 94. And then we played the next day, and I was going to pitch again back to back. And I was like, you know what? Like, all these kids came here. I'm freaking old. I already had my time. So
Right.
I'm going to
Right.
let
Right.
these kids play. And just so happened, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Eric Sim. He's a YouTuber. I trained with him a little bit at
Okay.
Driveline back in like 2016, I think, but he's become
Okay.
a pretty successful like baseball YouTuber. Um, but he was on our team. And then so after the second game the next day, I was like, hey, how about I face you in like live at bats? And we had a radar gun and stuff. So I faced him in live at bats. I hit 95 in those live at bats. And it just so happened that a guy with the Padres, who's like one of their senior advisors, Logan White, he was with the Dodgers. He was a scouting director with the Dodgers when I was there, and he drafted Russell Martin and Clayton Kershaw and
Right.
Jonathan Broxton, all those guys, Matt Kemp. Um, so really good dude. But his son like followed me on Instagram, and his son was telling him, "Hey, you guys got to like look at Beimel. Like he's throwing 95, he's 44. Like you should definitely sign him." So after I threw those live at bats to Eric Sim, I get a phone call, and it's Logan White, and he wanted me to come to Arizona. I was already in Arizona. I was going home, but he wanted me to come back and throw against like some of their minor leaguers and see if they wanted to sign me. So like a few weeks later, I go there, and it was so funny because I can see all like the brass and all these coaches and stuff. They're kind of looking at each other like, why is Joe Beimel here throwing for us? Like he's freaking old. so,
Oh,
so it was just funny. And then I step on the mound, and I'm just blowing it by guys, and my stuff was good. And they were all just kind of looking at each other like, is this for real? So,
that's great.
they ended up signing me, and I came back, pitched for that season. I went to Double A first,
Right.
and I just had a blast. There was no pressure on me. I was
No.
just there to have fun. And like I said, I didn't know if I wanted to play. So when they signed me, I went to Arizona to pitch for a little bit to get ready. And I walked into the clubhouse, and my wife was there. She was in the hotel, and I was just about to go to the field. I'm like, I might be home in a couple hours. I just don't know if I want to do this. And I went in, and as soon as I got there, I like text her. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be here. Like this feels like home. So it was a pretty
That's
cool experience. I had a blast. Um, I'm riding on 12, we're going on 12-hour bus rides, and I'm sitting there with a smile on my face. Everybody else is just like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And I'm just like, oh, this is awesome.
oh,
It's just, you forget, uh, obviously everything's perspective. And I just really enjoyed myself. And then eventually I pitched so well at Double A, they had to call me up to Triple A, but that year they were using Triple A as like the bubble or whatever. So you had to kind of go to AAA first. Um, and then they basically said they wouldn't call me up to AAA unless they were calling me up to the big leagues. So I went there thinking, oh, I'll probably be here for a week. So first week I was pitching really well. Didn't get called up. Didn't pitch great. A few times after that, just you're pitching in Albuquerque and El Paso, high elevation, which makes it a little tough. But I felt like I was definitely throwing good enough to get called up. And then kind of San Diego started to collapse that year. I think they had like a 97% chance to make the playoffs at one point, and then they
oh
didn't
wow.
make it.
Hmm.
So I think they were in the middle of that, bad run and bad collapse. So I don't think they felt calling up a 44-year-old was going to be their savior, and that'd
Hmm.
probably be a bad
Right.
look for them. So didn't happen, which I obviously I came back to because I wanted to make it back to the big leagues, but it was so fun for me. I loved every minute of it.
That's awesome. And during that time of you ramping up to realize you could get professional minor league hitters out, you probably developed some concepts that you're using today. How would you sum up? I don't know if this is a sales pitch, but I mean, what are you trying to promote in your organization as far as making kids throw harder and safer? Because that's the two things that you put with your sales pitch or with your with your information. You want to be safe. You want these kids to throw hard and safe. Obviously, you're promoting it anytime you get a chance. But so, what philosophies are you going with? Driveline is what you're using. And tell me where Driveline. Remind me where that started to come into baseball. I'm sure you were in the game when that became popular. And what are you doing with that in your business?
Yeah, I mean, I trained at Driveline in 2016. I feel like I was one of their like first pro guys
Okay.
that went up there. Um, after I had Tommy John in 2012, I came back. Velocity was down a little bit. And I had Tommy John at 35 years old, so I was a little older. Um, so that recovery and stuff was just a little tougher being,
Right.
not being in my 20s, being in my mid 30s, mid to late 30s.
Right.
And so I was just trying to find ways to get back my velocity and, tried a couple different things that worked. And then, I wanted to experiment and see if because the game was just trending in that direction. Velocity, people weren't signing you unless, you had higher velo.
Right.
And, I came out of the 2015 season where I pitched, I thought I had like a really good year. I had about a week and a half period with the Mariners that year where I was really bad. I was kind of trying to fight through an injury, which was stupid of me. And it really hurt my performance for that. That it was literally a week and a half, and I pitched about an inning and two-thirds and gave up, I don't know, like 12 earned runs or something like that.
Right.
So as a reliever, that kind of messes your whole season.
Right.
But then I finished strong, and I threw I'll never forget because this ends up being my last big league game. Is I was pitching against the A's, and I pitched I think 2 innings. And the last inning, I was walking off the field and I looked back and it said, had my name on the scoreboard, Beimel, and my ERA was a 3.99. And I just always grew up that if you had you had under a 4,
Right.
you had a good year. Especially I pitched in, enough games. It wasn't like pitched in 5 or 6 games or something like that. So I was pretty excited about the year that I had, with that bad week and a half. And then I went into that off season and just nobody wanted to sign me. It was just a time where they were looking at velocity and they didn't want guys that threw, 86 to 91. So I figured, well, I can sit here and complain about it and not like it, but I can also do something to try and get better and try and throw harder. So I did go up there, and we use a few things that I learned there. Obviously, at that time I started throwing plyo balls, and we have plyo balls that we sell, and we throw them. They're not like the end all be all by any means. They're a tool like anything else. But we've also developed kind of our own system, so it's not necessarily driveline system. It's our own.
Okay.
And yeah, one of the biggest things with us is it really depends on the athlete's goals. So if you get a guy that they come in and they're like, hey, I want to play in the big league someday, and they're throwing 80 miles an hour, then you're like, all right, well, if that's your goal, we have some work to do. You know what I mean? Because you're not going to play in the big leagues if you're throwing 80. Those guys are very few and far between. Even in the 80s, even 90 now isn't very hard.
Right. Right.
When you're looking at all the guys that are there. So we kind of take what you want to do. Do you want to play D1? Do you want to just maybe make your high school team? Because we're going to do, if that's the case, we're going to do different things than we would if you want to play in college, or, you want to play at an NAIA, or you want to, play D1, D2, whatever that is. Then we come up with a game plan to kind of help you reach those goals. And most of it is based on health, because obviously if you're not healthy, you're not going to be on the field and you're not going to play. And in some instances, we will chase velocity with certain guys, but also we got to remember that, like I said, we got to do it in a safe way. So
Right.
uh, we have like what's called a dynamometer that you put on your wrist, and at least once a week, it's through this app called the Arm Care app. And at least once a week, we will test your arm strength. And, it tests your internal rotation strength, external, your scaption strength, your grip strength. And based on those numbers, we'll kind of curate an arm care program for you that's designed specifically for your needs. So, some guys will have higher internal rotation than external, and we want those a little more balanced. And sometimes it's the opposite. Um, and if, usually injuries happen because it's either one, a lack of strength, or it's a huge imbalance. So, then there are other factors, obviously, like workload and fatigue and
Right.
mechanics can play a factor. But the biggest ones are usually strength and imbalances, within your shoulder. And so if we do have a guy who needs to throw harder, we'll look at his numbers that week, and if those numbers are down, we'll be like, hey, you've got some fatigue, something's going on, your arm's tired. We're not going to do your velocity today because it doesn't make sense for you to do it while your
Right.
strength's down and you end up getting hurt and now you can't play and you can't
Hmm.
pitch.
Right.
And then the other thing is remembering that we're trying to get better on the field. We're not trying to get better in a gym atmosphere.
Right.
The guys
Right.
will throw off the mound and they're throwing, 95, but they might be spraying it all over the place. And maybe sometimes that's fine if that's what we're trying to do, and then we can dial it in and get them to throw strikes and
Right.
command the zone. Um, but also, with our strength program, we have to remember we're not trying to create bodybuilders. We're trying to create athletes. So we get a full balanced strength program, mobility, kind of everything that you need. Um, and then it always changes. We're always testing, retesting,
Hmm.
collecting data. Is I mean, if you can't prove it to me with data, like I won't believe you because a lot of times it's like we've had kids who even have trained with us and been like, oh, I want to go do this because they do more explosive things. And I'm just like, wait a second, I have this data here. We have this thing called a VBT device. And what it does is it measures your bars. It has a string basically into this decoder
Hmm.
type box, and it measures how fast you're moving the barbell. And somebody a lot smarter than me came up with if you're moving the barbell at like 0.8 meters per second, that's kind of the threshold between like speed and power,
Interesting.
and really recruits those fast twitch muscle fibers. So that's kind of the threshold of where we want you when you're doing certain movements, and we will do heavier things and stuff like that, but we also want you to be explosive. We've had kids who are like, oh, I want to do more explosive stuff, and then I look at the data and I go, hey, you were doing that stuff when you came in, and now
Look at
you're
it.
you're moving 100 more pounds, at 0.8 meters per second. So you are actually more explosive, and you might not be jumping around and doing box jumps and stuff like that, which we do that stuff, but you know, we have the data right here that shows that you're more explosive than you've ever been. So, that's why we do it. That's why we record basically everything. And it's all about testing, retesting, making sure they're getting better, and that's our goal. We want you better on the field.
And it's not about pitching. You also, this is a baseball player place. This isn't just pitching.
Right. Yeah, we have hitting. We've got a lot of good coaches. I'm not going to teach you the mechanics of a swing.
Right.
I never really learned how to swing. I could just do it, but I don't know how to teach it. I know that the bigger that I've been and the stronger I've been, I've hit the ball harder off a tee. Like the biggest and strongest I've been, I would still take hacks off the tee, and we have stuff that measures your exit velocity and all that. And I've hit a ball 112.5 off a tee, and the only reason I could do that is because I was big and strong. So, that's another thing. Like We kind of have a motto that I learned from a guy, Ryan Croton, who's he's just a really smart dude. He's got a PhD in biomechanics. He used to be at the Angels, and he's part of the arm care program. But he has this saying that strength matters most, and it couldn't be more true. It's just if you're strong, it cleans up a lot of things mechanically. It cleans up what you're able to do, on the field and how you're able to swing. And I have a guy that I train that goes to Penn State Barron, and we haven't done any sprint work, but he's just gotten bigger and stronger. And he ran his fastest 60 he's ever run. I think he ran like a 6.8 or something, and he'd never run under like a 7.3. So being strong it just cures a lot of things if you have things going on that you're not doing correctly.
How rewarding is it to helping kids achieve their goals? There's different levels. My son plays D3 ball at Rhoades. He's had a blast there. He has 1 year left, Jameson. And, a lot of people said, if you really want to play bad enough and you have to be good to a certain point, you're going to find a place to play, whether, at some level in college. How rewarding is it to see these different skill levels and how these kids are trying to get there? Because that's what you're trying to do. Your love of the game, you're trying to give it back.
Yeah, absolutely. The funny thing is when we first started our training facility in LA, I was like, oh, you know what? I only want to work with like big leaguers or minor leaguers or high level, like college guys. I don't necessarily want to work with, lower level guys. And then, we actually had a kid come in, one of our first guys. He was a freshman, and he walked through the doors, and he's just a little guy. Um, you know, Not a lot of athletic skill. And, we had him throw. We're like, here, he was a catcher, and we're like, here, take this ball. Like, I want you to throw this ball as hard as you can into this net, and just see. And he's winding up, and he's throwing, and he's shuffling, and he's grunting, and it's like 55 miles an hour. And I'm just like, and I did a mobility screening on him, and I'm just like, man, you're like a 70-year-old in a freaking 13-year-old's body. Like,
Wow.
mobility was just bad. He was
Right.
stiff, couldn't do stuff. I'm like, what is going on? And I remember telling my business partner, I'm like, what are we supposed to do to like help this kid? Like, I don't, he just, I don't know. His goal at the time was he wanted to play. He wanted to start varsity. So we work with this kid, work with him for 4 years, and he actually gets a scholarship to play in college at Menlo College, like in Northern California. And I was just like, that's crazy, like, so that was probably one of the most rewarding
Right.
instances, because I was just like, holy cow, like this
You
was
help
somebody
grow a
I'd,
player.
originally
Yeah.
thought like, oh, I'm not going to work with that kid. And then you do it, and you realize all they need is somebody to, tell them they can do it, but also give them the program. Obviously, they provide the work. We don't provide like a magic pill where you're just because you show up, you're going to get good. You have to really dedicate yourself, and it's not easy. Like, the stuff that we do is not easy. We're, lifting at least 4 times a week. You're doing all your throwing, all your hitting, all your mobility, and plus you're also going to school. So you're going to high school, and you got to get in there when you can, and you got homework. So we understand, that it's a huge commitment, but we always find that the guys who want it, they commit themselves, and they find time to get everything done. And we've just seen incredible results with those kind of players. But then, even the better players, the guys who are in the big leagues, and the guys who, are in college and they want to get drafted, and or maybe they don't get drafted, but we can provide an opportunity for them to play indie ball and then get signed by an affiliate or something like that. So it's been really cool.
And you're still a parent, of 11, 10, 11-year-old. And I look back at my son, who, again, the Division III athlete, and looking back to what we did, and we meaning the people that we had together. We took a group of kids and played as much baseball as we could over the year. No regrets on our end as far as giving them a chance to play. I mean, Jameson played many games at Memorial Park. He loved playing up there. Actually, a personal favorite place of him, probably because of what he did. But the thing is, getting these kids out playing and not overwhelming them necessarily, but doing as much as they want to do. And then, as you say, individually, if they want to get better, it's up to them at some point. What would be your base? I mean, you have a 10, 11-year-old right now. What would be your basic advice to parents who, number one, maybe wants to say, well, he really loves baseball. What's the right way to do it, or what's the wrong way to do it? And that's as far as like raising a kid, because we always see it. Boy, that dad's going to ruin that kid, or that, this family's just leaning on their kid way too much. Or, boy, if they push him a little bit more, he could be really good. Where's the balance there, and what do you see?
Well, I think obviously the kid wants to do it. He has to want to do it, and then you can provide provide what you need to provide to help them get better. I think as long as they're the ones who want to do it. Like my son, funny story is, I played with Pat Mahomes, in Pittsburgh, and his son is Patrick Mahomes, right? So my son knows that, and he's like, he watched the show Quarterbacks, the first one that came out, and he just loved Patrick Mahomes. And I was like, oh yeah, I played with his dad. And so my son wants to be an NFL quarterback, and he's like, well, you play in the big leagues, and I'm your son, and Patrick Mahomes' dad played in the big leagues.
Fair.
So that means I could be an NFL quarterback too. And I'm like, yes, absolutely, you can. So we haven't let him play tackle yet.
Right.
He's only 10, and he
Biding
plays
your
flag
time.
football, but
Yeah.
he loves it. Like, he has a football in his hand at all times. He's throwing it into the couch. He's running around. He's going outside. He does have a football helmet, so he'll put like his real football helmet on. He's out in the yard running around, throwing to chairs and stuff like that. So it's super easy when you have a kid that is that into it. And he loves baseball too, so that's been fun the last couple years, because we'll go out in the backyard and hit. And my cousin Mike at Beimel Baseball has like a hitting school, and he loves to go to that. And I think if your child has that desire, it's easier to kind of provide more avenues for them than if they're just like, oh yeah, maybe they could be good, but if they just don't have that love and they don't have that desire to do it, it's going to be tough. They're not going to want to do it when they're 17, 18. And with that being said, being good at stuff is pretty cool. But if it feels like a job, or you're getting kind of drug all over the country, and you don't really want to do it, those kids are usually going to be the ones that burn out pretty quickly. And then on the other side of it, you got to know when to kind of pull the reins back as well, because I see it all the time with younger kids where they're playing year round. They're playing on 15 different travel teams, and they're going all over, and they never stop. And they never stop to train. That's one of the biggest things. Like, you just can't play year round. You're going to create so many imbalances in your body, because obviously baseball is a one-sided game where you're swinging the same way every time, you're rotating the same way every time when you throw.
Bigger problems in the warm weather areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We see some of our guys in LA that they just never stop, and that's why there's such a, there's just kind of this crisis with arm health, because they're just playing year round. And you see these kids that are 12, 13, 15, having Tommy John surgery, and you're just like, this is ridiculous, and a lot of it is because they're not doing the other things. They're not, testing their arm. They're not trying to get stronger. They're just out there playing every single weekend. And, the craziest thing I see is where you get a kid that plays on a weekend, and they pitch Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and the rules allow it. And you're just like, or they pitch, an inning at 10 o'clock in the morning, and they pitch another inning at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's like, big leaguers don't even do that, so
Right.
Big leaguers are getting paid millions of dollars to do it. Why do you think it's okay for a 12-year-old to do that stuff? You know what I mean? So it just, that part of it is a little bit frustrating. And I think um, just the travel ball culture has kind of fooled parents into believing that you have to do all that. If you don't do that, you're not going to get exposure or you're not going to be good. We're actually on the training side, if you train a little bit more, you're probably going to be better at baseball than just, just simply playing baseball usually doesn't make you better. You have to do the other things to help with that.
We're with Joe Beimel. We just talk a lot of philosophy. And Joe, to get your content, what you put on social media, give me the Instagram and the other places you post, because I see it on Facebook and I just think everything's gold stuff to me. Where can we find that for people that might be interested?
I do have Instagram. That's probably the thing I post on the most. I think usually my Instagram posts just go right to Facebook
Right.
because I didn't necessarily have a Facebook for a long time.
That's why I
Um,
see it. Yeah.
yeah, I think we were selling like plyo balls on Instagram, and then I needed to have Facebook to be able to do that through like Meta or whatever. So I ended up getting one, and I
Okay.
never used it. So then I was like, well, I better. I've realized since being back home, it's such a useful tool, especially in this area where people just they love the content that's on there, and I feel like it just reaches more people.
Yeah.
Um, especially in the area. My wife has like an event planning business, and
Okay.
it's crazy the responses she gets on there. So, um, I posted on there a little bit more. So I'm on Facebook, on Instagram. I do have like a Twitter or an X account, which I'm starting to post a little bit more on that, but I don't really do much on there, or YouTube. So I'd say Instagram. I
Okay.
think
Beimel Elite Athletics.
yes, and then we have our Los Angeles. We have BEA Los Angeles, BEA Texas on there.
Okay.
So that's usually the stuff that's going on with our facilities. And then my personal Instagram, I kind of put a lot of that stuff on there too, and it's more, a lot of baseball related stuff. But then, I put some bowling stuff on there once in a while, or some family stuff. But it's usually something. Pretty much everybody wants to see baseball content from my personal page, so that's usually what I'm doing.
You mentioned bowling. What's your average right now, and how many leagues you in?
Oh man, my average right now, we started the winter league and it's just I didn't start very good. I bowled this summer and I averaged 222, so I was
Okay.
like super pumped about that. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I finally got it." Because I bowled when I was younger till I was about 12. And then once I was wrestling and playing sports, bowling was on Saturday, so I couldn't really do it.
Well, happens to all of
And
us.
yeah, and then, moved away, and I'd bowl once in a while in spring training, things like that. And I was still decent. But then once I moved back to the area, I got in a couple of leagues. So I bowl on Wednesdays and Thursday nights. Um, so last Thursday, I hit a 691. And then last night, I bowled another 691. So I'm looking
Okay.
to hit over 700 tonight.
Okay.
I just
How
got
many?
a couple new bowling balls, so
Ah,
they're
how many? How
they're
many?
starting. I'm
300?
starting to break them in.
Any 300
Well,
games?
I do not. Last year I hit a 299. Um, Thought the last ball was good. I threw it and it kind of cut through the face, and I left the pin, so I hit 299. And
Can you
then
beat Mookie Betts? I mean, is Mookie Betts above your head here?
no, I'm way better. I've been on a couple podcasts like with guys in the LA area, and they're like, "Oh, Mookie Betts, maybe you'll be the next Mookie Betts or something." And I'm like, "What? I'm way better than him." So there's an app called Lane Talk, right? So you can go on Lane Talk and you can compare yourself to like PBA guys. And
Right.
because Mookie Betts has bowled a couple PBA events,
Okay.
um, he's actually on there, so I can compare myself to him, and I'm just like head and shoulder above how good he is. I'm way better.
It's. I mean, bowling is numbers. Yeah, bowling is numbers, and you have it, man. You got them.
Yeah.
Um, Joe Beimel has pitched into major leagues for a long time. Joe, I'm looking at the all-time games appearance, the games pitched or games played, I guess, or pitched, and you are tied at 149th all time. Do you know what Hall of Famer you're tied with?
I do not. I'm not
Robin
sure.
Ro- Robin Roberts.
Oh, okay.
Hall of Famer from the 50s.
Yeah.
Like guys, yeah. Wade Hoyt is at 151. He wrote a great book. Dan Quisenberry, which would be a guy you
Okay.
might remember.
Yep.
Before we get into this is one question somebody asked me to ask you. Who was your baseball hero growing up? Who was your favorite player? Who inspired you at the young age?
I had a bunch. It was usually hitters. I always liked
Okay.
hitters. I didn't necessarily love pitchers until, I got into like
Right,
college.
right.
So I loved Mark McGuire. I loved Eric Davis, Ken Griffey Jr. I love Barry Bonds, all those guys with the Pirates, Van Slyke, Bonilla. Um, it was just funny because I got to play against most of those guys.
Yeah,
I got to play
yeah.
against McGuire. I got to play against Griffey and Bonds and Bonilla. And then had Andy Van Slyke as a first base coach in
Right.
Seattle. And then I'd say pitching wise, I always liked Greg Maddux. He was obviously a good one to like. And then you got to be teammates with him as well. Uh, so it was just, obviously it was a fun career and I got to experience a lot of things, but I'd say that's probably the coolest when you have like somebody's poster in your bedroom and now all of a sudden you're actually trying to get them out. Uh, I That was just one thing I wasn't ever expecting. I always expected I was going to play in the big leagues. It was my dream to do it. But I never, at any moment when I was a kid, thought, oh, I'm going to be facing like Barry Bonds when I'm in the big leagues. It's
Yeah.
kind of just really weird and, uh, it really blows your mind, especially when I'm 48 now and I just sit back and think about it and look like, that's crazy. Like I go to my parents' house and I got a bunch of my old baseball cards and I've got like just pages of like Ken Griffey Jr. and Mark McGuire, Frank Thomas,
Yeah.
Ricky Henderson, and I
Yeah.
played against all of those guys. So it's just,
Yeah.
it's pretty surreal.
We'll get into how you some numbers against some of those guys you mentioned. I have some pretty good numbers we'll have fun with. The other question is, you're a retired baseball player with a lot of years under your belt. As specific as you want to, what does a retired Major League Baseball player? What benefits are you enjoying or have as a retired baseball player as far as retirement, healthcare, stuff like that? And how, I'm sure there's different levels of service on what you get. How would you sum that up? That's an interesting question that a lot of people have asked.
Yeah. As far as healthcare, we have, so basically when you're playing, you get like the best healthcare that the law will allow. And then once you retire, you still have access to that, but you have to pay for it. And there's different tiers you can do. Like, the best one is just a little more expensive.
Okay.
Not a little more, it's a lot more. Obviously
Right.
healthcare is not cheap,
Oh,
no matter
no.
who you are. Um, so but once if you do get rid of it and you go to a different plan, you can never get it back. So I've kept that over the years. Obviously, you pay by the month for that. And it's expensive, but um, definitely worth it. And then um, baseball also lets you add to like a 401k. They've got during the season, they've got like pre-tax that you can put a certain amount in, post-tax, you can put a certain amount in. So I just always put the maximum amount I could into that. So I've just kind of got that. That's waiting for me to get older, I should say.
Right.
And then because I have 10 years, I have my pension maxed out. So I can take that anytime at 45 and all the way up to 62. Obviously, you get the most money when you turn 62. So I kind of have that as well waiting for me. Um, and it just, I think it's if you take it at 62, you get like $260,000 a year. After that, and like I said, the earlier you take it, the less it is, but you've got to kind of make that decision on your own to see what you want to do. And if you take it at 45, it's drastically less, but still pretty good.
And the amount of service time does reflect what you get.
Yes. Yeah. And I think if you have just one day, you get something, but, 10 years, it doesn't matter. You have 10 years or you have 20 years, you get the same, it maxes out at 10 years. So that's why you see so many players want to play 10 years. And, I posted about this, recently, but there's literally only like around 1,800 people. It's less than 10% of everybody who's ever played in the big leagues, get 10 years of service time. So there aren't many of us, 1,800 out of, I think it's up to like 22,000 or something that have just who've played in the big leagues. And that's even the guys who have played one day or got one at bat. Out of those 22,000, there's only 1,800, around 1,800 that have 10 years. So it's pretty rare to do it. That's why I feel, super blessed that I was able to play that long and do have those benefits from, making sure I took care of myself and was able to play as long as I did.
Yeah, that's very interesting stuff, and we'll sum it up with some things about your career. But the one thing I wanted to mention here another so you pitched for 7 major league teams. There were 4 other organizations that you played for, did not play in the majors for. That'd be your minor league stuff. I have you with 17 different minor league cities that you played for. Can you name 17? And that's counting indie ball.
All right, I'm pretty sure I can. All right, so we got Erie, we have Hickory, North Carolina, Lynchburg, Virginia, Altoona, Pennsylvania, Rochester, New York. Let's see. Durham, North Carolina, Las Vegas. Let's see. I'm trying to think here. There were a couple in there that were rehab assignments, so I don't know if those count.
Oh, okay.
So I was with the Nationals and I was on a rehab assignment. I can't remember the Potomac.
Yes.
There's a Potomac in there. That was a disastrous outing. So let's see.
1 inning, 7 hits, 5 earned runs. I get it.
Yeah. It was just rehab and everybody was swinging first pitch at everything. I'm like, oh my gosh. Sun's like in the outfielder's eyes and he misses it. I'm like, come on, guys, let's go. Help me out here. So what's that? That's 8, I think. Yeah. And then Colorado Springs.
Yep.
I was there for a little bit. Let me see. Indianapolis, I was there for a little bit with the Pirates, 2011. Yep. I was also in Bradenton because that was a rehab assignment.
Right.
So that's 10, I think, right?
You're going chronologically, which you're nailing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and actually Altoona's 11. You were there twice on your stats.
So, that's right. That's right.
I'm counting that as
Gwinnett, Georgia is one. Omaha is one for sure.
Then we talked about the 2 at the end.
Yeah, San Antonio and El Paso, and then I had New Britain.
You're missing one.
I think
you skipped over it after Gwinnett.
Yeah, I can't even. What's the
Mariners.
one?
Mariners.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Why can I not think of the city up there? Tacoma.
Yes. Well done. You obviously have a good memory of that because that's up there on amount of teams. favorite place to pitch, and that doesn't have to be one of these 17 in the minors. We're going to talk minors here. What venue really sticks out to you as one of your favorite?
Oh man, that's a tough one.
Okay.
Usually it wasn't. I didn't like any of them. No.
Right.
If I was back there from the big leagues, I probably didn't like most of them. I did
Well,
like pitching in. I like pitching in Las Vegas. I pitched really well there, and then that's why I got called up to LA.
well, that's
I actually liked. I liked San Antonio and El Paso. I was living in El Paso at the time that I was playing there, so that was pretty cool.
Right.
And then my business was there, so guys that we train were coming to the games, stuff like that. That was pretty cool. And then I'd say Erie. I liked that just because that was my first year and it was close to home. And then I would probably say my favorite was Altoona, just because it was so close to home. I was a starter as well, so I knew when I was pitching, and everybody from home was coming down there and watching. So that was probably my favorite back in 2000.
So, okay, this is a selected collection. These are all Hall of Famers minus Bonds against Joe Beimel. Barry Bonds, 1 for 16. Todd Helton, 4 for 16. Fred McGriff, 1 for 9. Ken Griffey Jr., 1 for 10. Larry Walker, 1 for 6. Tony Gwynn, I said, 2 for 5. Ortiz, 2 for 5. That's a bunch of lefties and Bonds in the Hall of Fame, 12 for 67. Is that why you had a job in the majors for as long as you did?
I think so.
Where's that rank?
Yeah, that's where it was one of those things. Like I would say, like, the guys like that, it's just so easy to get yourself mentally prepared, and just the adrenaline kind of takes over. Sometimes it's a little harder when somebody comes up, you don't know who they are. You don't have much, data or scouting reports on them, or they're just, I hate to say, you kind of relax, but it was always guys like Craig Paquette, or, somebody who wasn't, they were a great player. Obviously they were in the big leagues, but they didn't have like a great reputation as being somebody who's going to do damage against you. And I feel like those guys always hit me better than some of the bigger guys, and obviously Tony Gwynn was phenomenal, and I gave up his last home run of his career.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's, it's just, I think it was just easier for me to kind of get myself up for the challenge and get that adrenaline flowing with those guys. And like I said, I played against I loved all those guys growing up. And so now when you play against them, it's, I was never really intimidated by them. I just was like, this is pretty cool. I'm going to just go right after them because I feel like I owe that to them,
Right. Well, that's a good point. Couple lefties that you didn't fare as well. They're not in the Hall of Fame. So Ryan Howard was 7 for 15. Prince Fielder 6 for 18. The one that, and then there's some right-handed guys. Well, Albert Pujols was 5 for 13, but you faced him at the peak of his powers. I mean, his first decade or first 7-8 years of his career was up there amongst the best.
Yeah. Yeah. And even those guys like Ryan Howard and Prince Fielder, I did at one point had like really good numbers against both of them. And then it was like one season they got, I think both of them got like 3 hits in that season or something like that.
Right.
So leading up to like the 1 year, I think the 1 year in Colorado, I didn't have great numbers against Ryan Howard, but before that, I think they were pretty decent. And then, he had just like the 1 year where he hit me well. And same thing, Prince Fielder, I gave up a home run to him in Seattle. And that was actually when I was battling that injury. That was over that period we talked about earlier in 2015, when he was with Texas. But, yeah, I mean, those guys were tough outs. So that's the life of a left-handed reliever too, where you can get them out 10 times in a row, and then you give up 5 hits in a row, and now they're doing pretty well against you.
The one that I got to kick, the one I got, excuse me, the one I got a kick out of, and I didn't realize this guy would still be playing when you started. Jose Cruz, 0 for 4 against Joe Beimel.
Yeah, yeah, he ended up being a teammate as well. So yeah, it's just like I said, it was just fun to be able to face some of those guys that you grew up playing or you grew up rooting for and collecting their cards and watching them on TV, and it just made the experience that much better.
Ever been ejected from a game?
I was never, nope. Not in the big leagues, not in the minor leagues. I did get ejected in the Junior College World Series for a reason I still don't know to this day. So I was, we were losing our final game there back, my sophomore year, and I was not saying a word. I was just standing there, and I had my jacket on.
Mistaken identity type thing.
Well, yeah, somebody, the umpire goes, "Number 26, you're gone." And I was just like, 26? Like, I was like, wait a second, that's me. But then I'm like, I have a jacket on. How do you know what number I am? And there were rumors that the coach had mentioned to the umpire, he had said, like, hey, I'm going to throw somebody out if your guys don't stop chirping or whatever. And apparently he said, if you have to throw somebody out, throw number 26 out. And I'm just like, okay. So he really liked me, apparently.
Joe, yeah, there's so many things we could talk about. Obviously, your career spanned a long time, and I look at the end of the story I wrote with you on in 2017, and the quote you gave me was, "I basically played my whole career with nothing above average as my second pitch. I had a good sinker and could locate my fastball." And then I said, that's an anomaly for a big league pitcher. And you said, I'm an anomaly for a lot of different reasons. And I go back to that. I'm like, that nails it. And to be able to sit back and recall the year, how proud of you and how did you surprise yourself that you can sit back and say, boy, I was around this game for a long time. I loved it. And now you're giving back to these kids. I mean, talk about what baseball means to you as we end this discussion.
Well, I mean, I just love it. And I love, obviously I love the game itself, but I love the other things probably a little more. Like I loved being in the clubhouse every day. I loved being around the guys. I think, over the years, as you get further and further away from playing, that's probably the biggest thing that you miss is just those relationships you have with people who, you're around them more than your family. So, I always expected, I mean, I've been saying, I always told people, even when I got drafted, I wanted to play till I was 40. And then once I was playing, I was like, well, I might as well play until I'm 50, and didn't make it that far. I don't plan on making a comeback or anything at 48 to reach that. I did actually get asked to play in like a Hall of Fame game over Memorial Day weekend in Cooperstown. So I might do that, but I said I wouldn't show up there if I couldn't throw 90. So I've got to start training again and come back, see if I can hit 90 at 48, 49. But yeah, with that being said, I always expected to play for a long time, and that's why I kept trying to learn different techniques, different throwing programs, different recovery programs, just because, I was kind of always the weird guy in the clubhouse that would be doing some, I did the Egoscue method for my body alignment, and I'd be laying there and in this contraption, and people are just walking by, like teammates, like, what is wrong with you? Like, why are you doing that? I'd be like, well, this is why I'm going to play. Like when you're going to be retired, I'm going to still be playing, and you're going to be asking me for tickets. So I joke around with the guys about that, but it served me well as a player to keep playing for that long, because that's what I expected and that's what I wanted to do. So I knew I had to kind of reinvent myself a couple times, but it's also just helped tremendously with having, baseball training programs, because, obviously I played for that long, and I can just kind of be like, hey, here, this is what you need to do. You can do all this stuff. It's going to take a lot of work, It's going to take a lot of time, but if you want to do something great and you want to play for a long time and you want to get to the highest level possible, these are the things you need to do. And, not to say that what I did works for everybody, but there's ways that we can, adjust it for everyone and make sure that that happens for the guys that we train.
Joe, I gotta leave. Last thing, who you got in the World Series? Dodgers or Blue Jays?
I've got the Dodgers. I mean, I love playing in LA. I was hoping the Mariners made it. I was possibly going to fly out there if the Mariners made it. But
you're that close to having two of your former teams in the series.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Blue Jays are good. They're tough, but I just don't see how you're going to beat the Dodgers with the pitching that they have, the hitting that they have. They're just so good. So I'll be rooting for them for sure.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, man. Well, good talking to you.